Hi, in this video, I'm going to go over thinking of slope as a rate of change. Now, you know slope is m, as in y equals mx plus b, right? mx plus b. And you think of that, or you're told that the slope is the rise over the run. So you take any line and you would say that slope would be the slope's rise, how far it goes up, right? And you divide that up by how much it goes over, right? Up, over, over. Rise over run. It's another way of looking at it. But what is rise over run? It is simply the difference between a certain height and another height, right? We're just taking, let's say this is what, 2 and this is 6. And since it's the difference between it, we subtract them. That's why we subtract. See where I'm going? And because there's a difference in it, that's a change in height, right? A change in the y value, because this is the y-axis, right? So if the difference between two heights is the change in the y value, then we could call it the change in output, because that's what the y values are, right? They're output in our formula. The input is the x value. And so when we're talking about the run, say this is -1 to +1, the run would be, also a change in input, right? And when you do that, when you have the change in output over the change in input, you get slope, because there is a certain amount of change in output per 1 unit of input, right? Let's actually do this part. Let's do 6 minus 2, right? Because that's 6 is our second input or second output. So that's why it's y2, right? Now, you could do it the other way, but since we're using 6 first, use the x2 value would be 1, right? Not -1. So 1 minus -1. 6 minus 2 is what? 4. 1 minus -1 is actually doof-doof. You know the doof-doof rule. It's actually 2, which means our slope is 2. So we're going up 2 every time we go over 1. A better way to explain it, it's like it's like the speedometer on your car telling you that you're going 45 miles per hour, right? If you go at that speed, that same speed for 45 for let me rephrase that. If you go at that speed for 1 hour, you will have traveled 45 miles exactly, right? You'd have to put the cruise control on and not run into any red lights or stop signs or anything, but that's what that means. That's what slope is. It's a rate of change. Now, let's use that to find the slope of a line given just 2 points in that line. Well, we have the formulas right here, right? we can assign those values to the points, right? So which point do you want your 1 to be? That's what the sub number stands for. It's the 1 and the 2. So pick the 1 point and the 2 point. So if this is the 1 and this is the 2, right, then we have y1, x1, x2, and y2, right? Almost confused myself there. All right, so we take y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? 12 minus 7 is 5. Negative 1 minus 3. It's always the difference, right? Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4, right? So we're starting at negative 1 and we're going down another 3. So negative 5/4 is our answer. But let me ask you, what if we did a little swap here? What if instead of this being 0.1 and that being 0.2, what if this was 0.2 and that was point number 1? Will we get the same answer? Let's find out. y2 is 7 minus y1, 12, right? Okay, right off the bat, it's a little different. x2, which is 3, minus x1, right? Negative 1. Always put that in parentheses when you have a negative. It's very important because you do 7 minus 12, you get negative 5, right? But 3 minus negative 1 is, here's the doof rule again. 3 plus 1 is 4. A good way to check your answer. Either way, you should get the same answer. All right, here, let's take it a little step further, and we're going to give ourselves some fancy wording for pretty much the same thing we just did. All right, find f of x if f of 2 equals negative 11 and f of 4 equals negative 25. Well, what does that mean? Well, we know there's a function f of x that we're trying to find. So f of x equals question mark. F of 2 equals negative 11. Remember what that means? The x is the input, right? And this is just the fancy notation for we're putting 2 in our function, and our output is negative 11. So if 2 is the input, well, that's the x value of a point, right? And if negative 11 is the output, and negative 11 is the y, x, y, right? That's our, so they give us a point. If that's a point, then that must be a point as well. That would be 4, negative 25. Okay, well, we can find the slope from there because we have the 2 points, right? Let's just say this was 1 and this is 2. Why not? So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, negative 25 minus a negative 11. Doof. So it's really negative 25 plus 11, or positive 25 minus 11. But your answer is going to be negative for sure, because the larger number is negative, right? So what is that? That is 14, negative 14. Let me just check my math there. Yeah, that's fine. Negative 14. All right, that's 4 minus 2. I should be able to do that one. 2, okay. So that reduces down to negative 7, right? It's 14 divided by 2, 7. Okay, so we have the slope, but they want f of x. We know that f of x is going to be mx plus b, right? Well, we have m, right? So negative 7x. What is b? Well, how do we get that? Well, there's the point slope formula. Because we have 2 points, we could use either one. And we have the slope. The point slope formula says that you can take your y, subtract y1, which is a point. It's not necessarily our first point that we assigned in number 1. It could be y2, who knows? Just so long as we have the corresponding x value. All right, so we just take our slope and one of our points and we plug in those values, and we should get y equals mx plus b after we substitute all these numbers in here. So let's just take 2, negative 11, because they're slightly easier numbers to work with, right? So we put the negative 11 in there for the y1, and just for m again. M is negative 7, and we'll leave x the way it is because we're looking for y equals mx plus b, right? So y and x are going to stay y and x. But we're looking for b. So we subtract 2 because that's our x1, right? So y plus 11 equals negative 7x. We distribute this, right? Plus 14. Subtract 11 from both sides. And what do we get? Negative 7x plus 3. And there's our answer. What if we use the other point, though? Let's see what happens. Y minus negative 25 equals negative 7 times x minus 4, right? That's the doof rule again. Y plus 25 equals negative 7x, distribute, plus 28, right? Subtract 25 from both sides, and voila, negative 7x plus 3, it's the same. Thank you for watching.